Nós, estudantes de Relações Internacionais da PUC São Paulo e integrantes do Grupo de Estudo de Conflitos Internacionais, firmamos uma parceria com Democracy Now!
A partir de agora, vincularemos com legendas em português as mais importantes notícias internacionais da semana.
From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
As I report to you, air attacks are underway against military targets in Iraq. We are determined to knock out Saddam Hussein's nuclear bomb potential. Some may ask, why act now? Why not wait? The answer is clear. The world could wait no longer.
George H.W. Bush has died at the age of 94. He was the nation's 41st president, the father of the 43rd. We'll look back at his legacy from how his 1991 invasion of Iraq began decades of U.S. wars in the Middle East, to his inaction as president to tackle the AIDS epidemic. Then we speak to independent Senator Bernie Sanders on the danger of President Trump, the Green New Deal, and last week's historic Senate vote to advance a resolution to end U.S. support for Saudi Arabia's war on Yemen.
This is a country that has been decimated by the Saudi-led intervention in Saudi Arabia. The United States is part of that intervention with the Saudis. We've got to get out and we've got to bring peace to that region. And then we need to help rebuild that struggling country.
All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. George H.W. Bush, the 41st President of the United States, died in Houston Friday night at the age of 94. His body will lie in state in the Capitol Rotunda from tonight until Wednesday. He'll be buried later this week in Houston after two memorial services in Washington, D.C. and Houston. Bush was elected president in 1988, becoming the first and only former CIA director to lead the country. From 1981 to 89, he served as Ronald Reagan's vice president. At his inauguration in 1989, Bush vowed to build a kinder, gentler nation, but as president, he oversaw two wars. Bush invaded Panama in order to arrest former CIA asset Manuel Noriega. An estimated 3,000 people died in the attack. A year later, Bush launched the Gulf War after Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. The U.S. attack devastated the Iraqi civilian infrastructure and killed an unknown number of Iraqi civilians. 12 years later, his son, President George W. Bush, would attack Iraq again. On the domestic front, Bush Sr. is remembered by many in the LGBT community for his lack of action in the 1990s as the HIV/AIDS crisis raged on. Bush refused to address and fund programs around HIV/AIDS education and prevention, as well as drug treatment. He also perpetuated Reagan's so-called war on drugs, which disproportionately criminalized Black Americans, saying we need more prisons, more jails, more courts, more prosecutors, unquote. More recently, Bush was accused of groping multiple women during photo opportunities. We'll have more on the life of George H.W. Bush after headlines. In Mexico, the new president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, was sworn in Saturday. Tens of thousands gathered in Mexico City's century Zocalo Square to celebrate the first leftist president in decades. In his inaugural speech, AMLO addressed security and vowed to end corruption and impunity.
With the inefficiencies of police bodies and the great increase in homicides, robberies, kidnappings, femicides, and other crimes, I'm calling on Congress to urgently approve a constitutional reform that allows us to integrate the military police, Marine police, and the federal police for a National Guard to organize the functions of public security in a manner that respects human rights.
President López Obrador announced he would call for a referendum in 2 years so that citizens could decide if he should remain in power for the rest of his term. On his first day in office, AMLO signed an agreement with the leaders of Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador for regional development programs aimed at curbing migration to the United States. At the G20 summit in Argentina, President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping have agreed to a truce in the ongoing trade war between the two countries. Trump will reportedly temporarily halt his plan to raise the current U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods from 10 to 25%, while China has agreed to increase its purchase of agricultural and industrial products from the U.S., as well as halt the export of fentanyl, a synthetic opioid, to the U.S. In more trade news, Trump announced he would cancel NAFTA as he pushes to pass the new U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement. The three North American countries signed the deal at the G20 summit, but it must still be ratified by their respective governments. In France, over 100,000 people took to the streets across the country Saturday, an ongoing dispute over mounting fuel prices. More than 400 people were arrested, 260 were injured in the third weekend of demonstrations since the Yellow Vest protests began. 3 people have died in traffic-related accidents since the start of the protests. Demonstrators are calling out the disconnect between President Macron's environmental initiatives used to justify the fuel tax hikes and the financial realities of many people in France. Newly released WhatsApp messages between slain Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi and another Saudi exile reveal Khashoggi's growing mistrust of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, as well as the pair's plans to launch an online campaign to counter the Saudi regime's human rights abuses. In one message, Khashoggi wrote, quote, "Arrests are unjustified and do not serve him, logic says, but tyranny has no logic, but he loves force, oppression, and needs to show them off. He's like a beast Pac-Man. The more victims he eats, the more he wants," Khashoggi wrote. The Montreal-based Saudi activist Omar Abdulaziz has filed a lawsuit against Israeli company NSO Group, which he says was hired by the Saudis to hack the pair's 400 messages on the social networking app. This comes as the Wall Street Journal is reporting the CIA has evidence that the Crown Prince sent 11 messages to close advisor Saud al-Qahtani around the time of Khashoggi's murder. Al-Qahtani is believed to have overseen Khashoggi's murder at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. Last month, the CIA concluded with high confidence that the Crown Prince was directly responsible for ordering the killing. Last week, the White House would not allow Gina Haspel, the head of the CIA, to testify before the Senate. In Poland, the UN Climate Summit opened this weekend in Katowice, Poland, with leaders calling for swift global action. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said climate change is a matter of life and death for many nations, and that the worst polluters are not doing enough to meet the goals of the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. This came just one day after Trump stood as the sole leader at the G20 summit who did not sign on to the statement reaffirming support for the Paris Agreement. Last year, Trump announced the U.S.'s withdrawal from the international agreement. In Texas, the white police officer who shot and killed a 26-year-old black Dallas man in his own apartment has been indicted for murder. The officer, Amber Geiger, entered Botham Jean's apartment where she shot and killed him on September 6th. Geiger claimed she thought she was entering her own apartment in the apartment complex. She was initially charged with manslaughter, but a grand jury decided to pursue the murder charge after hearing testimony in the case. In Wisconsin, Republican state lawmakers are attempting to push through a series of bills before the newly elected Democratic governor and attorney general take office next month. The bills are scheduled to go through a hearing today and would restrict the early voting period, moving up the 2020 presidential primary election to help a far-right justice remain the state Supreme Court, blocking incoming Governor Tony Evers from withdrawing Wisconsin from a lawsuit against the Affordable Care Act and allow the legislature to sidestep incoming Democratic Attorney General Josh Kaul in certain legal battles. 2 women have accused the renowned astrophysicist and television host Neil deGrasse Tyson of sexual misconduct, prompting his employers, the Museum of Natural History, as well as Fox Broadcasting and National Geographic, which air his popular series Cosmos, to investigate the claims. One woman, a fellow astrophysicist, alleges deGrasse Tyson groped her, while another, deGrasse Tyson's former assistant, described inappropriate comments and unwanted physical contact. Meanwhile, the story of a third woman who's accused deGrasse Tyson of rape for years is getting renewed attention despite it being largely ignored till now. Chia Ahmet, who is African-American, has alleged deGrasse Tyson raped her while they attended University of Texas. She spoke publicly about the accusation multiple times, reportedly as early as 2010. Politico is reporting Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen has requested other cabinet departments deploy civilian law enforcement officers to the U.S.-Mexico border as early as this week. President Trump sent some 6,000 troops down to the border last month. But unlike military forces, law enforcement officers would not face restrictions of the Posse Comitatus Act, which prevents military personnel from engaging in certain civilian law enforcement duties. On Friday, students from the City University of New York rallied outside the offices of the CUNY board chair, Bill Thompson, to protest his support of Amazon's new New York City headquarters.
We are demanding that CUNY Board of Trustees Chair Thompson rescind his op-ed in the Daily News endorsing this Amazon deal. We also call on Cuomo, de Blasio, Thompson, and everyone involved in this scheme to invest this money instead in CUNY, where we have crumbling buildings, where we have students that cannot afford to go to college, where undocumented students are not properly protected. Do we really want a New York that only works for wealthy, elite, corrupt politicians and CEOs?
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
Last night, I ordered U.S. military forces to Panama. No president takes such action lightly.
As the nation remembers former President George H.W. Bush, we look back at the defining moment of his first year in office, the 1989 invasion of Panama, which killed some 3,000 Panamanians. We'll speak with historian Greg Grandin.
The invasion of Panama took place a month after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and it really set the terms for future interventions in a number of different ways. One, it was unilateral. Two, it was a violation of national sovereignty. And three, it was a preview to the first Gulf War.
The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights has just called on Washington to pay reparations for the U.S. invasion of Panama. We'll speak with one of the attorneys, Jose Luis Marin, who brought the case. And we'll talk to the celebrated Chilean writer Ariel Dorfman. His latest piece, headline, George H.W. Bush thought the world belonged to his family. How wrong he was. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In Wisconsin, protesters took to the state capitol Monday evening to oppose an effort by Republican state lawmakers to push through a series of bills to strip power from incoming Democratic Governor Tony Evers before he takes office. Protesters flooded the Capitol building chanting, "Respect our votes," and "Shame." The bills aim to limit the power of the Democratic governor and attorney general-elect and would restrict early voting periods. The Republicans drafted the legislation after Republican Governor Scott Walker lost a close race to Evers in November. In North Carolina, election officials are investigating possible fraud in a tight congressional election that remains uncalled nearly 1 month after the midterm elections. Unofficial results have Republican Mark Harris leading Democrat Dan McCready by just over 900 votes. The investigation centers on a number of absentee ballots, which appear to have been signed by witnesses who have ties to Leslie McCrae Dowless, a Republican operative who worked for Harris. Dowless pleaded guilty to insurance fraud in the 90s after he took out a $163,000 policy in a dead man, according to court records. Additionally, a disproportionately high number of requested absentee ballots were not returned in a county that favored Harris in both the primary and general elections. The North Carolina Elections Board may decide to hold a new election if they're unable to declare a winner. President Trump lashed out at special counsel Robert Mueller and his own former personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, on Twitter Monday. Trump responded to Cohen's lawyer's request for prison time served by tweeting Cohen deserves, quote, a full and complete sentence. Last week, Cohen pleaded guilty to lying to Congress to help cover for Trump. Trump also praised his longtime advisor, Roger Stone, for having, quote, guts for agreeing not to testify against him. Some experts, including George Conway, litigator and husband of White White House counselor Kellyanne Conway have said the tweet amounts to witness tampering, which is considered an obstruction of justice. Special Counsel Mueller is expected to file a sentencing memo today for Michael Flynn and sentencing memos for Michael Cohen and Paul Manafort in the coming days. CIA Director Gina Haspel is set to brief senators on the murder of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi today. She'll reportedly meet with a small number of top members of the Armed Services Committee, Foreign Relations Committee, and the Intelligence Committee. Last week, Haspel was reportedly blocked from a congressional briefing, prompting outrage from senators who instead had a closed-door meeting with Defense Secretary James Mattis and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Haspel's the only high-level U.S. official to have heard the tape of Khashoggi's murder after other members of the administration, including Trump himself, refused to listen to it. In Spain, the far-right Vox party won multiple seats in a regional parliamentary election in Andalusia Sunday, the first successful election for the far-right in Spain since the country returned to democracy in the 70s after the death of military dictator Francisco Franco. Former Trump advisor Steve Bannon threw his support behind Vox early this year and has apparently been advising the far-right party. Vox campaigned on an anti-immigrant, anti-abortion platform as many worried about the rise of fascist political populism in Spain. In France, Prime Minister Edouard Philippe has suspended the foreign minister has suspended fuel tax hikes in an attempt to quell the growing tension between President Macron's government and protesters. An 80-year-old woman reportedly died over the weekend after a tear gas canister flew into her home, hitting her in the face. More than 400 protesters were arrested across France over the weekend. In Paris, cars and several buildings were set on fire, windows were smashed, police fired tear gas, stun grenades, and water cannons at protesters. Multiple journalists have reported being attacked by protesters since the demonstration started, both in person and online. Qatar announced plans to withdraw from the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, known as OPEC, after over 50 years of membership. Several OPEC members, including Saudi Arabia, have cut off trade with Qatar since 2017, accusing the country of supporting terrorists after it reestablished diplomatic ties with Iran. Newly inaugurated Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador is following up on a campaign promise to create a Truth and Justice Commission to investigate the 2014 disappearance of 43 students from a teachers' college in the town of Ayotzinapa in Guerrero. The students were attacked by local police as they headed to a protest and are presumed dead. International experts say the Mexican military and federal police also played a role in their disappearances. In news from the Philippines, the founder of the independent news site, The Rappler, has returned to the country despite facing an arrest warrant on tax evasion charges. Maria Ressa was in the United States, where she received multiple press freedom awards when she and her organization were indicted in what is widely viewed as an attack against the press by the authoritarian Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte. On Monday, Ressa posted bail, but vowed to continue reporting.
I am not a criminal. I have been a journalist my entire life. I will continue to hold the government accountable.
Maria Ressa is due to appear in court later this week. Visit our website, democracynow.org, to see our interviews with her. A U.S. admiral found dead at his home in Bahrain over the weekend reportedly died by suicide. Vice Admiral Scott Sterney oversaw U.S. naval forces in the Middle East. Back in the United States, calls are growing for Texas to halt its executions after BuzzFeed revealed the state buys its lethal injection drugs from a Houston pharmacy whose license has been on probation since 2016. As they were dying, 5 of the 11 prisoners Texas executed this year said their bodies felt like they were burning after they were injected. The process is supposed to be painless. 2 more executions are scheduled this month, including one tonight. Gloria Ruback of the Texas death penalty abolition movement protested Monday outside Green Park Compounding Pharmacy and Gifts.
Let us know now that you will stop making compounding lethal injection drugs. If you do not, you will face an international campaign to boycott your business, and we will shut you down.
In St. Louis, 3 police officers were indicted last week in the assault of an undercover police officer at a 2017 protest. The undercover officer, who is black, was at a demonstration protesting the fatal police shooting of 24-year-old Anthony Lamar Smith when officers Dustin Boone, Randy Hayes, and Christopher Myers violently attacked the veteran police officer, kicking and beating him with a baton and causing serious injuries. A 4th officer, Bailey Coletta, was indicted for her role in helping to cover up the attack. Before the attack, the officers exchanged messages suggesting they, quote, whoop some ass and, quote, grab and toss protesters around. In Alabama, an autopsy of the man shot dead by police Thanksgiving Day after reportedly being mistaken for a gunman revealed he was shot 3 times in the back. 21-year-old Mantic Fitzgerald Bradford Jr. was killed by police after they responded to a shooting at a mall in a suburban Birmingham where 2 teenagers were injured. A lawyer for Bradford's family says the autopsy confirms the victim was not a threat and that he was moving away from the police. Nexstar Media Group has announced it'll acquire Tribune Media for over $4 billion, making it the largest provider of local television stations in the United States. In August, Tribune Media pulled out of a proposed merger with right-wing Sinclair Broadcast Group. The FCC had expressed concerns about the merger with Sinclair despite rolling back rules that prevented consolidation in local media markets in 2017. And in Canada, Indigenous activists have been physically blocking the construction of the largest fracking project in Canada's history. Members of the Unistataklan stopped TransCanada Corporation workers from entering their territory on November 20th. The land on the western coast of Canada is in the path of the planned $4.7 billion Coastal GasLink pipeline. Last week, TransCanada applied for an injunction against the Indigenous community in an attempt to gain access to the land. This is Frida Hewson, a spokesperson for the camp.
The project's going to impact our waters, our salmon, our berries, our medicines, and everything that is our critical infrastructure is at risk. If the court grants them that injunction, that gives the police the right to try and come in and do a raid and take us down, which they would try to take us out of our own home, which we haven't committed no crime. We're just living on our land. We've never ceded or surrendered our land. We've never lost it through treaty or any other means, and we've never given up our decision-making power to any outside entities.
And a correction to an earlier story. Edouard Philippe is the Prime Minister of France. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
Nosso programa fica por aqui. Você pode acompanhar a gente pela página do Facebook e pelo blog do GS Terra em Transe. Nos vemos na próxima semana. Até lá!
Muita gente confunde engenharia biomédica com medicina ou engenharia biomédica com biomedicina, mas não tem nada a ver nem com um nem com o outro. Engenharia biomédica, como o próprio nome diz, é uma engenharia. E é uma engenharia que está relacionada à medicina, mas a gente não vai atuar nessa área. Então, a engenharia biomédica, a gente vai mexer com os equipamentos acerca da vida humana, ou seja, uma prótese, uma órtese, um equipamento de raio-x ou até um aplicativo que você usa em casa para o seu médico atender você. Então, tudo acerca da saúde que está relacionado com a vida humana, a gente está lidando.
No curso de engenharia biomédica, a gente também tem aula não só de cálculo, né? Não só da parte de exatas, a gente tem aula de anatomia. Então a gente utiliza o campus do Monte Alegre para fazer essas aulas, então os alunos vão até lá. Nós vamos também para Sorocaba, porque em Sorocaba tem o Hospital Santa Lucinda. É muito dinâmico, então os alunos estão sempre caminhando entre os campos e fazendo diversas atividades fora daqui, né? Não é só aqui dentro desse campus.
O curso de engenharia biomédica aqui na PUC, ele tem a base de 5 módulos. Então, a gente tem um módulo de biomateriais e reabilitação. O segundo módulo que a gente tem é de eletrônica médica, elétrica e eletrônica médica, que é fundamental em qualquer equipamento de grande porte que a gente vai estar mexendo. O terceiro módulo que a gente tem é de informática médica, então a gente vê toda a parte de programação, então é a parte mais tecnológica assim, do curso e mais atual.
A gente fez um projeto de informática no ano passado, que foi o App Inventory, que através desses blocos, que tem os comandos, a gente pode desenvolver aplicativos para celulares Android. Foi um personal doctor, que é possível você colocar os seus dados pessoais, então, por exemplo, o nome. Depois disso, você tem o seu IMC, que através da sua altura e o seu peso, a sua idade, ele calcula o seu índice de massa corporal. Tem uma tabela de vacinas, tudo isso você pode salvar. E independente de você fechar o aplicativo, desligar o celular, ela continua salva, então você pode abrir ele sempre quando você precisar.
O quarto módulo que a gente tem é de imagens médicas, então a gente vê toda a parte de imagens, ou seja, ultrassonografia, tomografia, raio-x, ressonância magnética e até a parte de medicina nuclear. Na parte prática a gente vem ver como é que funciona mesmo o aparelho. Se falando de raio-x, tem toda a parte da física por trás, né? Como é que funciona, como é que ele deve ser operado, a gente tem que saber tudo acerca do equipamento para poder trabalhar em cima disso nele.
Quando a gente teve o laboratório, a gente mediu a sala para ver se estava tudo correto, porque tem tudo uma norma de como as salas devem ser. E além disso a gente mexeu no painel, como deve ser feito um exame correto de raio-x. No segundo ano que tem tomografia, no terceiro tem ultrassom. Então a gente vai visitar e ver o equipamento funcionando mesmo em hospitais.
E o último que a gente tem, ele fala sobre gestão hospitalar. O que é gestão hospitalar? É como se fosse a administração de um hospital. Só que um gestor hospitalar ele tem que ter toda a base de conhecimento sobre os equipamentos, porque nós vamos ser os engenheiros dentro de um hospital.
Ao passar dos anos, esses eixos vão ficando mais complexos, né? Porque a gente consegue fazer com que o aluno ele vai adquirindo conhecimento e tornando esse aprendizado mais complexo para chegar até no final, no desenvolvimento do projeto de conclusão de curso.
Você foge um pouco dessa coisa de sala de aula que acaba sendo cansativa. Sim, a gente tem as matérias que são mais em sala de aula, que aí entra as matérias básicas de engenharia, que é cálculo, física, até a anatomia entra um pouco, mas a gente tem bastante aula prática, então a gente já foi nos laboratórios da PUC de Perdizes, em Sorocaba, a gente já fez visita. Essa parte focada nos módulos, assim, os professores conseguem dar práticas que você consegue aplicar no seu dia.
Aqui a gente consegue ver toda a base que a gente precisa.
Toda segunda-feira aqui no curso a gente tem a tutoria, né? Que seria uma atividade grupal. Cada grupo vai ter um tutor. Então é o professor que vai guiar esse projeto. Eles apresentam pra gente um problema, uma situação real que aconteceu. A gente discute sobre aquele problema, formula questões, discute sobre os termos desconhecidos. E a partir daí a gente leva esse problema para casa, pesquisa as questões em casa.
No final a gente faz um resumo crítico sobre tudo que a gente aprendeu.
Eles são avaliados tanto na abertura do problema quanto no fechamento do problema. E aí a gente vê, na realidade, alguns pontos principais. A participação, a liderança, conteúdo, se está apropriado ou não, né? A participação do grupo como um todo. O próprio nome diz, é uma metodologia ativa, né? Onde o aluno, na realidade, ele é obrigado a buscar o conhecimento.
A base que ela fornece para você, tanto de conhecimento, quanto de você ir atrás do conhecimento, te ensinar como ir atrás de tudo, a como pesquisar. Porque no mercado de trabalho, eles não vão te dar um livro e falar, faz um projeto. Eles vão te dar o projeto e você tem que correr atrás. A PUC ensina você a correr atrás disso.
A gente tem estagiário na Siemens, na GE, temos alunos, ex-alunos que trabalham na Johnson, nos hospitais são no Sírio-Libanês, no Hospital das Clínicas. Então o mercado está absorvendo muito bem os alunos aqui do nosso curso.
Quando o pessoal vê o nome PUC, você já sobe um degrauzinho na escada de uma profissão.